Hi everybody, my name's RHIANNA DHILLON. Thank you so much for coming to this, which is the first of our monthly feature film labs of 2019, which are all about supporting emerging young filmmakers, giving them insight into different roles within the film industry, and also the inspiration to create your own work. It's so lovely to see so many of you in the audience. So today is all about screenwriting. I'll be interviewing a panel of exceptionally talented screenwriters and filmmakers. We'll then be showing you the BFI Network Short of the Month and chatting to the filmmakers behind that. And then we've got Greg Loftin, who will be taking you through a screenwriting interactive masterclass. At the end of the day, at 3, we've got free networking drinks, which is always a really good place to meet fellow writers and filmmakers. And we've even got a drop-in script doctor. You can kind of go for these surgeries, which sounds a lot more dodgy than it actually is. You can talk to our industry experts who can help you with your own film scripts. But before all of that, I would love to introduce our wonderful panel today. So we have ISAAC Tomicdzek, Grace OFORI-ATTAH and Chris Blaine. Please come to the stage. Give a warm welcome to them. Thank you. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. How's it going?
Good. Not too bad.
Good. Now, I know there's a little bit about you in each of the leaflets, but perhaps you could just do a little introduction about who you are while you're here. Isaac,
I'm a writer-director, started off in music videos, and now I'm currently writing 2 TV shows. They're in development.
Amazing.
Probably better.
That's pretty good.
I'm Grace, I'm a screenwriter, and I am also writing a few shows that are in development and have had a couple of credits on some Sky shows as well.
Cool. My name's Chris Blaine. I'm one half of the Blaine brothers with my brother Ben, who's obviously not here today. And we've made a feature film called Nina Forever, which came out about 3 years ago. And we're currently developing another couple of features. And yeah, we're working on some telly ideas as well.
So tell me, first of all, when did you first get the idea that you wanted to do screenwriting? When did you realise that it was a viable job?
Let's go first.
Isaac, start with you.
Okay. I kind of always wanted to tell stories, so I always wanted to make films, but I think only probably in the last sort of 4 years have I thought it was viable, until someone's actually willing to read your work and say, yeah, this is good, we'll pay you to do it. So it's a pipe dream until someone's actually prepared to kind of give you the time. I went on a screenwriting course, sat in a sort of writer's room environment for about a year, and I think once I'd been in that environment and actually sort of learned the craft in a new way, rather than just reading scripts myself and kind of sitting there writing out ideas, it became viable then.
Okay. Grace, I know your route in was quite unusual, really.
It was quite unusual.
Love their story.
So I studied medicine at university and had always wanted to write novels, and come from quite a traditional West African background. My parents were like, you can just write on the side and just do a vocational subject at university. But I kept going with the novel. I got some interest from that. And as I qualified, found it harder and harder to finish this novel. And then about 4 years ago, I went to a screening of a short film which was about depression. And I thought, maybe I could write something like that instead of this novel that's taking me a decade to finish. And so I started script writing then and really enjoyed it and had something that I'd finished, which I could share with other people. And yeah, that was the beginning, really.
Amazing. Chris?
My brother and I were always messing around with cameras at school, but an actual job, I think in the last couple of years it's felt like it's
Really?
Yeah, in a way, you kind of like...
Well, hold on, you made your first film 3 years ago, and in the last 2 years it's felt like a viable job.
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, you know, you kind of like... We made lots and lots of short films, and short films are not a job. Like, you're never going to make a living out of making short films. You're going to make a very large loss. We did that for a very long time. Yeah, so we're doing lots of other jobs alongside. But the actual, writing and getting to make stuff only really happened in the last couple of years.
So who were the people that you sort of turned to? You know, you talked about people actually wanting to read your stuff, and who were those initial people who sort of said, yeah, we can help you out with this?
I mean, so I did a writing, sort of a year-long writing scheme situated here, and there were like 14 other writers on that program.
How did you find that?
That was on, I think it was on it used to be on the Hive. It used to be called the Hive, the website, and then and it's now called Screenskills. So I went on there. There was like an advert for kind of like a screenwriting program, and you know, applied for that, got onto that, and there was 14 other writers in a writer's room, and just by having other people reading your work was really good. I mean, I had got shortlisted for Film London financing with a short film, sort of about 2 years before that. Didn't get the funding, but just having had that script get to the sort of final stages was kind of validation enough to say, okay, cool, you are on the right path, but you're going to have to work even harder now. So, yeah.
Is it all about finding the right people to read your work? Because, you know, I show my mum everything I write still, but obviously she's always going to say it's great because she's so biased. So how do you go about making sure that the people you're showing your initial work to are going to give you honest feedback?
So my sister is an actress, and she was my first port of call because she's obviously seen lots of scripts, and she can give quite good critical feedback. She tells me if something's not very good. So yeah, naturally she was the person that I first turned to when I wrote my first script, and through her she had a contact who was a producer who also said, if it's not good, then I will tell you, because I see lots and lots of scripts. And he was someone who I thought I could trust to give me good feedback. And I mean, there were so many people who could read a script and tell you whether or not it's good. So yeah, anybody that you know who's acting or has been to drama school or teaches drama as well. I've got a friend who's an English and drama teacher, and she also reads some of my stuff too.
Okay.
Ben and I are part of a group which is called the Scriptorium for some reason, but basically it's a bunch of writers, and so we haven't for a little bit, but essentially every month somebody comes along with, I've got a script, and somebody comes along with, I've got a pitch or a treatment, and we rip it to shreds, make that person cry, and they go away and rewrite it. It's generally how that's worked for a long time, and that started way before, when it was, you know, a bunch of us all wanting to get to make stuff, and it wasn't happening. And now, you know, some of the people in the group, so it's like Destiny and Carrigo, who got to make Gone Too Far, and I've forgotten what it's called, but Lenny Henry Story that was on BBC, and she's constantly in work now. There's Claire Wilson, who's writing everything in telly these days, who's an amazing writer. There was a filmmaker called David Palmier, who's finally going to get to make her first feature pretty soon, which will be amazing because she's nuts and brilliant. And then another writer called David Lemon, who's really great and has got this really cracking vampire film which we've been trying to get onto, which we haven't managed yet. But yeah, and a lovely guy called Guy Ducker, who is a writer, director, editor himself, and edits a lot of feature films as well as writing. So yeah, it was really, the nice thing with that, in terms of with other writers, is you get, to start off with, it was, you'd go, in terms of feedback, you'd constantly be giving all of your ideas as how you'd do that story, and that was really useful to be thinking through other people's films in your own way. But the most useful feedback was always just, what are you trying to do? And then you're not doing that yet.
Okay.
And that's kind of, generally the best feedback is when somebody asks you, but what is it you're trying to do? And then you explain, and they go, doesn't do that.
Is that quite painful to hear like kind of really harsh feedback on your scripts? How important is rejection when it comes to your job?
Oh man, the thing is, if you can't handle rejection, then there's no point in being in the game. Like, Messi is only good because he doesn't hit the back of the net all the time. He has to practice hitting the back of the net all the time, and then eventually he can do it. So, you know, if you aren't prepared for someone to say, is this a comedy? Yeah, well, it's not funny. Or, you know, like, is it a horror? It's not scary. You have to keep coming back to it. And I think just having an environment of people who aren't yes people, who are prepared to give you honest feedback and honest opinions that are going to be constructive, is so key. And if that means you have to kind of create your own network of people rather than kind of rely on someone else's, you know, you have to build a network that is supportive and sort of find the collaborators, just like Chris was saying, you know, people who are prepared to give you feedback. But rejection also is key. Like, I submit scripts to tons of competitions, And I've been posting those rejections on Instagram and saying, look, you know, for every 50 rejections I get, I've had one win, but that win is a significant one, you know. So it's really important to just don't take it personally.
Do you end up, you know, there are all these kind of read this book if you want advice for this. Is it worth reading books on how to write? Is that helpful? Have any of you ever found that helpful?
Yeah, I think there's some really good advice out there for people who want to write. So I haven't had any kind of formal training, and I Googled different resources, and I think as long as you've got some advice on what is good, then there are some great free tools out there as well as books. So I use something called screenwritinginfo.com, something like that, and that taught me just the basics of what a script should look like and how you do like certain things, like just even like dialogue and what action means and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think there are some great resources out there to teach you the basics.
There's a book by John York called Into the Woods, which is worth everyone reading. He kind of actually talks about all of the different books of how they break down the way to tell a story, and he manages to get it down to basically being there's one thing that's important and the rest doesn't really matter, and that's the midpoint and everything else.
The midpoint.
Yeah.
What's good about that as well is he's British, so he's writing it from a sort of British point of view, so there's references in there that you're able to kind of, we can all relate to, you know. He talks about EastEnders and Dr. Foster and stuff like that, so it's a little bit, it's more applicable to us, I guess.
You're actually the second person to recommend that book this week,
It's a brilliant
I've
book.
heard. Yeah.
It's a brilliant book.
So you just mentioned UK writing. What are the major differences between UK and US writing, and is it important to get a handle on the differences before you start? When you kind of are starting out in your career, you want to go perhaps one way. Is it better to stick with the UK while we're here, or? I
think to start off with, like, as a writer, you're kind of going, people want to know what your voice is. And so it's going to be quite hard to write, I think, for an American market if you're not American, and you might actually lose the thing that makes you special. So, like, you know, you're looking at Phoebe Waller-Bridge at the moment, who's, you know, coining it on everything.
Yeah, I've heard of her, yeah.
Yeah, you've heard of her, but it's like she'll get brought in because you go, well, I know exactly what she's going to do.
Yeah.
And so she's going to be great at that stuff.
What, do you think she's going to Fleabag up Bond? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, she's going to be great at the double entendres, and you're going to be like, you know, the funny stuff that is necessarily needs to be there in Bond, that's going to be her, yeah, for sure. I'm not sure that, you know, you're going to be necessarily asking her to be writing all the action, or, you know, I don't know how all that comes together. But she's definitely going to be there doing, you know, putting in the stuff where you're going, now it's witty in a way that it wasn't before. So yeah, there's that, and as a market thing, so I was saying to Isaac just before, there's a project that we were working on where somebody came to us with an idea and they wanted to make it into a TV series, and we went to Channel 4 with the idea, and they said, yeah, that's okay, could we make it smaller, could it be like a 3-parter? And eventually rejected it, and we were talking to some Americans who were getting excited about it, and they were like, yeah, great, how does it end after the 5th series?
Oh my God.
And that's kind of the difference in the mindset between Britain and America is, you know, Britain's we kind of don't have very much money, and so we've got to be very careful about how we spend it. And America is, how can we make a lot of money? But yeah, the other bit is Americans are incredibly positive at all times.
Another thing that I would add to that is, I think it's probably easier as a newer writer to get your kind of work out there in the British market. In America, I think you're more likely to get regular work because they do very big writers' rooms. You can be like a staff writer for a number of years, but it's much harder to get your own original series up and running, whereas the UK, I think it's probably slightly easier to do that.
How competitive is screenwriting? I mean, you know, we've got a whole NFT2 full of wannabe screenwriters, so is it a competitive market, or is it quite a nice way to work together and make contacts, and how does it work?
I would say, well, ironically, we're all at the same agency, so like, I don't know, like, that's probably not a perfect example of how competitive it is. I think if you've got a unique voice, then there's always a market for your work, because people are buying into you rather than the genre or, you know, the type of kind of project you're writing. And there are lots of writers out there who write, but there probably aren't as many writers who finish. You know, like if you have completed more work than the rest, you are instantly on a higher level, because there are lots of people who start something and just put it aside and they won't finish it. And if you are knocking out, 2 or 3 scripts every few months, you are already sort of a few steps ahead. So it's not as competitive as directing, Everyone wants to be a director.
Scripts is that? 2 or 3 scripts a month?
No. I said every few months.
Every few months.
Yeah, every few months.
What size?
I don't know, like a short play or a short, pilot, or not like a 200 page.
I was like, yeah.
I didn't say they were any good. I just said just knock them out, just finish. But it's not as competitive as kind of directing and acting, I guess.
Right. What about working with a co-writer? Because obviously you kind of talk about being a duo with your brother, and obviously you have that connection.
Yeah.
But just in general, writing with a co-writer, is that more of a challenge because you're constantly kind of butting heads, or do you really complement each other?
It really works for us. The upside is that when you're in the room together, it goes really fast, and you really get through a lot of the problems a lot quicker because you're really questioning each other, and jokes actually become funny in a way that if you're trying to write on your own, you've got no idea.
Right.
And the downside is that you need to be in the room together. Which means that it's actually much slower to get the stuff written because you have to be in the same place. And
right.
So it's not kind of just get up at 6 in the morning, and that would be weird if at 6 in the morning Ben was around my house. Like, how did you get here? So that gets harder. But I've always really liked doing the collaborative side of stuff. Yeah.
What about you two? Have you ever tried that, or is that interesting to you? Yeah. Would that interest you?
I had only ever written on my own, but my first job was coming into a project that had been going for a few months and having to rewrite other people's scripts and still work with them. And I think that kind of thing happens quite a lot. So you learn very quickly to be collaborative and how to adapt to other people's kind of tone and things that fit a series. So I think in TV and film, you do have to be able to work collaboratively and to be able to write with other people, but you don't always have to, and you can do your own stuff as well. But it's a useful skill to have, to be able to write in partnership with people, because that will often happen.
How did you find it, being able to work with all the different decision makers that were involved in the project?
Yeah, I mean, I found it very challenging at first, because I'd gone from sitting in my bedroom on my own and doing stuff that was just for myself, and then going into it professionally and having, deadlines where there's a whole production that's running and everybody needs whatever you are writing as soon as possible. It's very challenging, and it's that thing when you're talking about rejection, ideas that you think are good, there are many voices above yours, producers, commissioners, that will be feeding back to you about how they see it. So I think you've got to be quite flexible with that. And then if you're working with other writers and rewriting stuff that they've done, that's quite a difficult thing as well, because you've got to be sensitive to the fact that they've worked on something for a long time and they've had their own ideas about how it should be, and then you're being told by someone else higher up that they want something different. So yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of people management skills that go into that and making it work for everybody.
On the collaboration element, I have a movie wife, and we basically did the screenwriting program together, and we've worked on a few things together. She took a script of mine, made a short of it, then we worked on a sequel to that short together, and she did a pass on another short film that I wrote, and that's kind of going somewhere. And I think it's good to have a foil that you can come back to, because writing is a very lonely process. So every now and then you kind of do want to just keep your edge and just recharge and just say, look, I've got this bit that I'm struggling with, could you maybe have a go? I was on the phone to her this morning because she's just done a pilot and she kind of needed to fix up a few bits, and so I think it's really important to have maybe 1 or 2 people that you are prepared to sit down and write with, because eventually you're going to go as far as you can go on something, and you really will need another voice who believes in you and sort of understands what you're trying to do and isn't there to sabotage you, let's say. So yeah, it's key. Find a movie partner.
If one of your scripts is picked up, at what point do you relinquish control? at what point do you sort of say, okay, it's not me anymore, it's you? How do you? Is it really hard to? It's not me, it's you. Is it hard to like let go of that, of like your baby? Ooh, silence. Anyone?
Yes. So I haven't had anything produced yet that was my original idea, but I've had them optioned, and I think as soon as someone else is involved, you don't necessarily have to relinquish it entirely. I think if you've found the right production company to work with, and often it's almost a bit like dating. So you get invited to meet people who are interested in your work, and it's usually a kind of best fit scenario, I think. So hopefully you've found a production company who you trust, who have bought your idea because they can see the potential that you see in it, and you can work together. And if it's not working out, the option runs out and you can find someone else. But it should be a good process of not having to relinquish your idea and working it into something even better that someone else has got good ideas about.
Yeah.
If that happens.
Yeah, I think with me and Ben, generally, there's stuff that we've written for other people where we're thinking of those people that we're writing it for. And so that's fine, away it goes. And then there's the stuff that we're writing, which we're definitely thinking we're going to be making ourselves, which then you get yourselves into a little bit more of a knot in a way, because you feel that much more precious over it and that much less likely, you know, it makes it harder for the thing to actually happen because we want to keep a hand on it.
Yeah. Because you write, you direct, you edit.
Yeah.
So that must throw up its own challenges.
Yeah, it means less time writing as well.
Right.
So yeah, you know, the ideas take a little while longer to come around. So yeah, you know, the more specialised you can be, the more you'll be able to churn through work in whatever specialism you're doing. Yeah, but actually one of the nice things of doing the edit with a lot of stuff is you get to see the dynamics in a way that is a lot less precious, because like, especially when you're starting out and you're writing, you know, you're kind of like, yeah, this is my idea. When somebody starts criticising it from above, it's really hard to be able to step back and see what's going on there. Whereas if you're editing someone else's project, it's really easy to just sit there and go, yeah, I agree with those notes. Yeah, I see where that's coming from, and see the pain on the director's face as they, wallow in their self-pity. So that's actually quite a nice bit on the editing side of stuff, and it is basically you're rewriting the film when you're, you know, or whatever it is you're making, you're rewriting it when you're editing. If you're making a feature and you're making your own one, you can do a lot with, which we did do with our film. And then with telly, you're kind of basically just cutting out the bad bits.
Right.
So you know, yeah, the rewrites, there's a certain level to what you can get away with, depending on how much they'll let you. Yeah, it's quite a nice process in the edit of seeing how the final words come together into an actual project.
So tell me a little bit more about the different disciplines then, writing for TV or writing a short film. Do you notice the difference in your writing when you're writing for different disciplines?
You want to go first?
Short film, you've got to just do it in one go. I hate trying to develop a short film. It doesn't
Really?
work. Yeah, we had a year of doing, years ago there was a scheme called Digital Shorts, which was, you know, when Mini DV came out, and suddenly we had to think digital, and nobody knew what that meant. And we wrote a couple of films which were a bit inspired by 24 Hour Party People, but kind of true life stories, one about a guy called Ben and one about a guy called Chris.
Pretty true life.
Pretty true life,
Yeah.
Which was really hilarious in terms of the feedback that we got from the group first off, because people were kind of going, well, this character, I just, you know, he was such an arsehole. This guy, Ben, dropping this woman off of this roof. So we
Sorry,
were,
what did you say?
yeah, dropping this woman off this roof. Yeah, it was just, you know, it's a true life story. So we were trying to write that and developing it. Basically, the guy who, the exec in charge, was, his idea of development was that you needed to be writing about one thing. It sort of makes sense. But then it got to the point where it's like, yeah, it needs to be about the dictionary definition of that one word that it's about. And then if there's more than one dictionary definition of that word, it needs to be about that one specific part of the dictionary definition of that one word. And yeah, we got completely lost by that point, and we had no idea what he was talking about. So yeah, usually with shorts, if they come out in one go, that always feels nicest.
Okay.
And then, yeah, features, you're trying to do a complete story. And then TV always feels like you need to keep throwing new ideas into the air so that there's reason to keep watching. Yeah.
And I'd just say that TV seems to happen faster than film. I think film can take a really long time to come to fruition.
I've found it quite liberating writing plays, and that's been a good source of kind of just sort of honing my craft slightly more. But it's interesting that I've read interviews with other writers, the writers of Run, Daniel and Marlon. They said, you know, if they had embraced theatre more when they were younger, they probably would have had a faster trajectory to where they are now, because you can write something for stage, put it on in front of a group of mates, and then it's done. You know, it's out there, and people are hearing your words, and they're hearing your voice. So I think don't be afraid to to just dabble in that every now and then, because it is an easier sort of access point for people to hear your writing and see your writing performed. Obviously, this is about screenwriting, so I'm not sort of saying forget screenwriting, but I do think there's far more opportunity for young emerging writers to write for stage than there are for sort of film. And then, you know, when you get a group of mates who are making films, you've got, particularly when it comes to dialogue, you've got a far more kind of mature grasp of how people speak and how they sound, you know.
This is actually one of my questions. I wanted to talk to you about writing dialogue, because people say sometimes that is the trickiest thing to write, and obviously that's all you're writing when you're a screenwriter. So how much research do you do into the sort of people that you're writing about?
My production assistant's in the audience now, and she went out and did tons of research with characters for this show we're writing, and we just voice notes, record people talking, conversations, social environments. It doesn't necessarily always help, but it's far more authentic hearing a line being said in real time than you sitting there trying to create that moment. And the rest of it can be you, but there's always going to be one or two really choice segments. I think it's really important to do that. Yeah.
Grace, any tips for that?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I have mainly written stuff that I know about, and I think when you go to meetings, they're often saying they want an authentic voice, and I think authenticity comes from things that you know and you've experienced. But then also, obviously, a lot of early writing work that you get tends to be on other people's shows. So when I was working on something called In the Long Run, I wasn't happy to start writing until I'd met people who were still alive, who were going to be depicted on screen, because I felt that it wouldn't be authentic without having done that kind of research and speaking to them and hearing what they were expecting to kind of see, and hearing their original kind of stories and trying to get some of that into the script.
Yeah, we got to do a research trip for a film that we're writing at the moment, which is set in Scotland, in a very remote part of Scotland. So we got to go there for a week and wrote the first draft there, whilst going and trying to meet as many people in the one pub that was in the area for about a 30-mile radius.
How approachable are people when you're like, look, can I just sit and listen to you speak and record you?
Don't tell them.
So that's illegal.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't record people. Ben has a notebook that he carries with him everywhere, which when he hears a nice turn of phrase, he'll just be sitting there, writing down, you know.
Is that a bit creepy sometimes?
It always seems quite charming, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because there's nothing particularly. It's just there's something that's tickled him. So you see this look on his face where you're like, oh, you know, you're enjoying life and you're writing something that you're enjoying, rather than you're definitely listening in on that person and doing it in shorthand. It's just there's a nice turn of phrase.
Yeah.
I will say though, scripts aren't just dialogue, and I think there is, you know, you have to write something that is visual. You have to, you know, if you're opening a script with dialogue and the dialogue's whack, no one's going to read the rest of that script. But you need to take someone into the story visually. You need to create a world that is, people can imagine. And I think people get sort of hung up on dialogue because they think that's the coolest part of a film. But actually, a film is visual, and a script and a film aren't the same thing. You're writing a script for someone to pick up and read and say, I want to see that film. And we all kind of get hung up on, you know, Tarantino-esque dialogue or whatever, but that's not what your kind of role is at this stage. You are creating a story with characters, and the dialogue should kind of be one of the last things you think about, because once you know your characters inside out and your story inside out, the dialogue just comes out. And if you're approaching writing a script to write cool dialogue, you'll fail.
Yeah.
Simply.
And the most important part of the script is actually the structure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Rather than any of the words. So I saw Schneider do a talk where, you know, he showed the little pages that he's got for every single film that he's written, where he's written down every single scene that he's going to write, and how long each of those scenes is going to be, and they're, you know, and he's trying to fit it all on a single page.
Right.
There you go. That's my little B sheet, and that is a large part of what you're trying to work out, is just what things happen, how long they're allowed to happen for.
And a lot of the dialogue that you write and you might spend a lot of time agonising over, once you know that script has gone to set, if things don't sound right, they will get changed or tweaked. So it is about the structure of the script, that it is a story that kind of jumps off the page. If someone reads it, they should be able to visualise some version of what was in your head, and yeah, it's a template to be made into a visual piece.
Some of the nicest bits on set is when you're watching an actor go, I can do that with a look.
Yeah.
And they cut the line, and it's better.
Yeah.
Because you understand exactly what they're thinking and all the whole meaning. You don't need the dialogue a lot of the time.
Yeah.
How much do you write the sort of in-between bits? Like, I guess they would be the stage directions in a play, but I mean, if you're writing your original script, obviously, when you're not sort of getting involved in other people's stories, how descriptive are you in the in-between bits?
I'm probably overly descriptive. I've been told that my scripts sometimes are overwritten, but I think, yeah, if you love words and you've got very clear ideas about what you want to translate to someone else, then it's sometimes hard to strip it back, and it will be refined. You know, good script editors can help you with that. But yeah, I probably overwrite.
I feel like that's also where an important part of where your voice comes into a script. How you describe and create a world, that's where people go, oh, I love the way you wrote that bit, rather than the dialogue. And I kind of spent a lot of time in the last sort of 2 or 3 years reading a lot of scripts that have been made and scripts that haven't been made, and kind of seeing how people used, you know, there are ways to write a script that are different. And for example, like A Quiet Place, they had loads of diagrams in there to sort of explain how things were happening. You know, some people use big action words and big, you know, caps. It's about creating that kind of vibe on the page, as much as kind of, you know.
It's usually like you're allowed one thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like in Moonlight, I think he bolds some text.
Yeah.
He does what?
He bolds, like
so
bolds.
some of the text is in bold.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's his one big change in the way of writing it. One thing that we use all the time now is the Walter Hill way of writing a script, where he doesn't write in paragraphs for scene directions. He writes kind of like haikus. So that you're trying to never go over the length of a single line, but you don't bother doing the double spacing between. So you just get this little stanza of action, and it's a lot quicker to read because it doesn't take up the full width of the page. And it really forces you to think about what's happening rather than about what you're seeing or what, you know, it kind of becomes a lot more propulsive, it feels, when we write that way.
I'm going to turn it over to the audience now, so if anybody's got a question, please stick your hand up, and we have got a roving mic which will come to you so we can all hear you. We've got a question right down in the front row, please. Can you put your hand up again? Thank you. There we go.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, on average, and I know this probably varies, but how many drafts do you go through when writing typically a film?
I'd say there's two, okay, for me it's kind of like two. You do like the vomit draft, which is just basically everything on the page, and that's not all in one sitting, it's just to get everything on the page and then go through that, really refine that, and sort of once you kind of take your time and just go through each sort of section, so maybe like 2 to 3 at the most, and then after that I just move on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably do something similar. So I want to get everything out and complete it, and then I'll go back and make sure it makes sense.
Do you ever show anyone that first vomit draft?
Yeah, I do sometimes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Only very trusted people.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us it's slightly different. I think there's a first draft which always feels quite enjoyable just to write, because it's like, yeah, this is perfect and this is, you know, totally works. And then usually what happens, it feels like with us at least, is second draft we add in some stuff to try and fix the things that weren't working in the first draft, and then it doesn't feel as good as the first draft. And then the third draft usually is the point at which we go, hey, we should do this thing, and it totally doesn't work. And then either the project dies or we get the chance to go and do a fourth draft, at which point it feels like the first draft but it's totally different from the first draft. And then after that it's revisions until you have edited it, and then probably after that you're still revising it until somebody takes it away from you. Says, no, it must be screened now. Everybody's in the cinema waiting.
Thank you, that's a great question. Yes.
Hi there. I'm Dimitra, and I'm a postgraduate student on the scriptwriting course at UEA. Thank you very much for tonight. This is really helpful. So yeah, my question is about performance directions. So you mentioned before that it's great if you see an actor just giving a look instead of a line. So if you actually think that when you're writing, that, oh, this can be a look and not a line, you need to write a performance direction. But this doesn't look really great on a script, so how do you go about that?
I've not seen it happen yet. The thing of actors being like, well, the first thing I do is I go through and I've got my big Sharpie and I cross out all the lines that tell me what to do. I've not actually seen an actor do that, or at least they've never done it in front of us. But yeah, there is that tricky bit. Sometimes it is better to write a line so that they know exactly what they're supposed to be thinking, and they say, well, I can think that, rather than to actually try and write a line that it tries to explain what it is that they're thinking inside of their head. You know, that can get tricky. And then sometimes if you're just being blunt, you say, they're thinking this.
Yeah. And what I found is doing drama scripts, people really don't like to be told what to do. And then I moved into doing comedy and was being asked to actively put in a lot of those kind of directions, which to me didn't seem quite right, but people seem to prefer it in a comedy script to a drama script. I don't know if anyone else had that experience, but I really noticed the difference. They'd actively say, you need to put this in so that the actor knows what they're doing. Like, they probably know what they're doing, but yeah, not in drama scripts, more so in comedy.
I wonder if some of that is from where comedy's coming from. You know, a lot of the comedy performers are not necessarily actors first, although yeah, a lot of them are really fucking good actors as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that first thing of like, you know, a lot of the people that you're going, okay, you're funny on a show, and now we're going to get you to act in a thing, and you're not necessarily an actor. I've definitely seen quite a few of those things happen, where yeah, to give them a little bit more of a guiding hand might help.
Yeah, that's probably,
I would say read other scripts. Like, honestly, like that's one of the best things you can do is read scripts that have been made and have been, you know, good films or successful films, and see how they've written that into a script, because you're allowed to kind of write a script in your own style as long as it follows the traditional format of a standard script, but you're allowed to put your own style into that piece of work. So you can the one thing you can't really do is camera directions and camera actions. You know, that's, you're not directing the film on the page. But if you feel like you have to say that this person throws them a glance, and that's in facilitation of the story and the structure, then that's fine. But I would say read other scripts to really see how other people have done it.
Yeah, and BBC Writers' Room has got a huge database of scripts that are really, really useful. And I think there are a few other things. If you Google for film scripts in particular, there are quite a lot out there on the web.
Is it Industrial Scripts?
Yeah,
Industrial Scripts has like
Industrial
all of the
Scripts.
Emmys nominated, all of the
Yeah.
Oscar nominated. Drew's Scriptorama as well has stuff. There's loads
There's
online.
so much.
Yeah, every award season there's usually a batch of here are all the nominated scripts
Yeah.
as PDFs.
Great.
Yeah, but
Thanks. I think we've got, gentleman in the hat, I think. Yeah, that's you. He just doffed it at me.
Hey, so I'm a music video director, and I'm working on building the team, developing and getting funding for my first major short film. And I'm wondering what you guys would say is the main advantage of getting a screenwriter on board on that team, and then building off of that, like, what should I look for? What makes a good screenwriter?
First off, someone that you want to have dinner with and like hang out with, and like find people that you enjoy working with fundamentally, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that person. I'm not going to get too technical. I'll pass it over to you guys.
Yeah, similar. Just someone who you think gets the idea that you want to make and you think will write something that you like.
yeah, I think actually the bit is that you're going, when you work with somebody else, they're going to bring something to it, and they're never going to do exactly what you want. And the thing to be looking for is for them to be bringing something better than you can that you can do, and that you accept that, and that you're happy to let them push it in ways that you weren't expecting it to go. And usually when that works, that's the best stuff by far, is when you go, wow, I wasn't expecting it to do that, and now it does that. That's so much better than what I thought. So yeah, be looking for that, really.
Well done on getting funding for your short though.
Yeah, well,
I'm working on getting funding. I don't have it yet.
Well done for working on it.
Cheers. Half the battle, right? I think there was a question. Yeah, gentleman just behind there.
Hi guys, thank you for coming out. 2 quick questions. Isaac, do you have any screenplays that have stuck in your mind that you read recently that you would recommend to anybody in the room?
Ooh, do you know what? I do, because one of them has just been made into a film and premiered at South by Southwest. I read one of the Blacklist screenplays. It's called Villains. And I remember reading it going, oh, this would make an awesome film. I love it. And some of the Blacklist scripts don't get made, so I was thinking, oh, I don't know, is it going to get made? Apparently it's awesome. It premiered at South by Southwest. People love it. It's 90 pages, it's lean, it's funny, it's pretty gross. I thought it was really cool.
Who wrote it?
I can't remember their names. Dan, I think it's like Dan Olsen. They're brothers, or they co-team. Dan Olsen. Just Google Villains. It's a good thing. It's got Micah Monroe and the guy who played the clown in It, one of the Skarsgård brothers. Bill, is it Bill Skarsgård? Yeah, so they're in it together. And the other one I really liked reading recently, I read like a really old one called Crusade, which was like a film that never got made. Ridley Scott was going to make it, and it's epic. But it was like, it's like 200 pages, and I was kind of, yeah, that was pretty impressive. I can see why it's never been made. So I can totally see it. It was really good.
Can I throw another question out there? Is that okay, really quick?
Go on.
Oh, sweet. So I feel like lives of creatives can have a lot of ups and downs. Do you guys have any techniques for when, if you've just written a shitty first draft, how do you keep taking swings? Do you have any techniques like meditation or anything that you use?
Meditation? Did you say meditation? Good man.
Better than hard drugs.
Go for a walk.
Yeah.
Go for a walk, man. Just get out of the room.
I don't know, the hard drugs route can work. You're kind of like, but there is a certain amount of like, when you're younger especially, you're going like, okay, what can I write about? What, you kind of feel like sometimes you need to give yourself some life experience.
Yeah. Enjoy
The BFI does not advocate the use of hard drugs when you're screenwriting. We've just got to say that.
I listen to a lot of film scores. There's a lot of film scores out there that are just, there's no dialogue, no lyrics in those, and so you kind of start to picture stuff and imagine stuff, and it's quite therapeutic if you're kind of cooking and listening to that, or kind of just reading and listening to that. It's quite good for the brain sort of juice. But I would
If
say
Beale Street Could Talk.
If Beale Street
Just
could talk, anything by Johannes
Yeah.
Johansson, Beale Street Could Talk is mad.
Yeah.
It's a mad one.
And that's a really nice one, like you say, kind of lets you breathe a little bit and
Yeah.
lets your mind go places.
Yeah, but when you're sitting there going like, oh shit, this thing doesn't work.
There's nothing that can do it.
Well, I mean, there is actually the thing of like, you're already thinking about it because you're going, okay, well that's shit and that doesn't work. And sometimes going for a big long walk Yeah, if you haven't got a dog, get a dog.
Yeah,
They can
I'd say
help.
that,
But
yeah.
you know, going for a walk, actually, a lot of the time, like a lot of writers actually really advocate that. Is the you know, you spend very little amount of the time actually writing of a day. You
Yeah.
spend most of the time avoiding doing anything because your brain is still working. Still working away at it, and usually, especially if you're sitting there thinking that this thing's crap, then you are trying to think, how can I make it better? So, and sometimes, you know, having a chat with someone in which you just spout at them for hours and they get really bored will really help, because you'll actually come up with the solution you need.
That's good. That's good advice. Yes, in the middle row. Yeah.
I had a question about genre and whether you like to focus on a particular genre or subgenre, or do you think it's good to explore different genres and subgenres?
Okay. I've got an answer.
I think that you can explore different genres. Personally, I started off trying to write kind of very dark psychological dramas, and had never considered anything else. The first job I got was on quite a light-hearted comedy, and when I went to the meeting, I said I've never written any comedy before, and I was really anxious about it. I turned down the job initially, and then they came back, and I had a go. And if you'd asked me at any stage in my life before that if I'd be writing comedy, I would have said absolutely not. But it's a different kind of muscle that it flexes in your brain. It's writing, and if you love writing and creating stories, then trying a different genre can be really exciting. And there's lots of different ways to express yourself. So I'm pro flitting between different types of story.
I've got an answer for this. I started writing mainly sort of coming of age stuff. The first feature I wrote was like a sort of semi-autobiographical thing about my sister and I. It's coming of age, it's about MCs, it's very much something I know. Two of the other projects I've done since have kind of been in that sort of world as well, London set, female protagonists, and then I was like, I'm going to write a sci-fi, and it's going to be a sci-fi blockbuster, and I'm going to do it, and it's going to be 120 pages, and it's about John Carpenter. This is what's going to happen. And it was really liberating, because I do want to write other genres. I don't just want to be the guy who writes coming of age, London, urban sort of stories. But the great thing about genre is you can put your own spin on it. So you don't have to write a sci-fi the way other people have written a sci-fi. You know, it's very important to feel like your voice can go into different pieces, different genres. So yeah, definitely do that.
Yeah, we've got a producer who really keys in on voice, is her thing. So she's actually told us we're not allowed to carry on writing some stories because it's not in our voice. And it is that bit of where you go, it's not, you know, it's not the genre construct that's you, it's your voice that's you. So you should be able to bring it to different kinds of stories. And as long as it feels like it's got your personality and your way of thinking in there, then yeah, it's all good.
That was a really good question. Thank you. Yes.
Hi there. So I was just wondering about how would you protect your ideas? So let's say you have your final script and you're about to pitch or sell it or search for funding. How do you protect that script?
You just don't send it out. Just don't give it to anybody. Leave it in a locked box. You can't.
You can't, yeah.
You can't.
You can't.
Literally, you know, like getting to a point where we were pitching on a thing with Americans via Skype, and we'd sent them a lookbook for the pitch meeting of the film, and there was this look of horror on their faces because they were like, "What? No, you're not allowed to send us anything that's written down." And I'm like, well, "What do you mean?" They're like, well, "You're not allowed to send anything written down." So it's just pictures that are few, because if it's written down, suddenly it's like, well, we can't have the meeting, and because you know you might try and sue us, because they're definitely going to steal some of those ideas that we pitched at them. You know, we didn't win the pitch, but I'm sure that in 4 years' time we'll be like, that was their idea. And that's sort of how it works. You know, you're kind of like, there's being precious about your one thing, but actually the thing is getting a turn on and having a lot of stuff. So then you're like, well, it's all part of you. And yeah, then it's easier to give it away as well, because you're going to have to. You know, there's no way of ever it just being your thing and no one else's.
And also, often you will pitch an idea that you think is great and unique, and someone else is doing something very similar. So you can't really copyright an idea. I mean, there will always be a unique way in which you're telling the story, because that's where your voice comes into it and where you see your characters going. But yeah, there are always, surprisingly, multiple ideas that you think are unique that other people are doing exactly the same thing.
I'll give you an example. I've really hustled to try and get my scripts read by companies, and you're not allowed to send them unsolicited material. So, you know, you have to email a lot and say, do you mind reading this? Do you mind reading this? Do you mind reading this? That's 7 to 8 months. And then they'll get back to you and go, yeah, send it over. They read it, they say it's great, but we're developing something similar. Now, whether or not they are, that's what you're going to find a lot of people say, instead of we don't like your work, or because it's easier for them to just say it's not right for us. And if it's a good idea, someone else is having it. And you have to accept that, like, trust me, there is someone else having that good idea out there. And so it is get the churn on and just say, that's a great idea, got one better.
I mean, it even happened with Disney, with Coco. They brought out Coco as about the Day of the Dead, but actually there was a film that had come out a year or two before that was also a Spanish film about the Day of the Dead, but obviously they were both in development at the same time, but obviously Disney, so much of a bigger company, they still managed to do all right out of that, I think. I think there was just behind. Perfect.
Hi, how's it going? I think more specifically this is about short films and music videos, but do you guys like to mix up the way that you approach the first draft of a short film in terms of, do you like to play with the way that either you do loads and loads and loads and loads of planning, or sometimes you do absolutely none and you just jump straight into it, or do you have one more routine way that you like to start something that's shorter like that?
So we like to write it all in one go with a short, and actually the big thing, what we're trying to do more and more with our feature ideas and TV ideas, is not to write anything down for a long time, or rather I write a shit ton of notes whilst we're talking, but we talk a lot and we record what we're talking about as well, because at some point, you know, you go, what was it we just said, that was really good, then you want to go back and no idea. But the big thing is, it's not a literary tradition making films. It's much more in the oral tradition of storytelling. So you're sitting around a campfire, and so if you're trying to tell this story in 10 minutes, can you tell me the story in 10 minutes without recourse to paper? And the more that you can just be thinking about it and talking about it, and this is the story that you want to do, and then eventually you just go, and boom, there it is in one go. And it won't be perfect, it never is, but it is what it is, and that will make it so much better than something that you've spent years trying to go over and over those self-same words, because it's really, you know, there's not enough space there to do that with a short. Most of the time I find you're better off just don't write it until you're very ready to write it, and then live with its flaws.
It's good to have a stack of short films. It's like if you've got a stack of short film scripts, it's useful, because it's a great way of sending it out to your friends or to people, and kind of not taking too much sort of taking the rejection badly, because you're like, well, I've got another one. And that's what happened with me. My mate read, I think she read like 5. I wrote these like really short horror scripts, like 2-page horror scripts. I was like, they're just whatever, they're just ideas. She read like all of those and went, I'm going to shoot that one. And then she read a short that was not a horror, which was like 8 pages. And she said, that's the best thing you've ever written. Like, really? 8 pages? That's the best thing I've ever just written. I've got a feature. She goes, no, that's the best thing you've ever written. I was like, cool. So I think just getting it out, like Chris was saying, and building a stack of shorts in different genres, like the question about subgenres. That's a great way to just go bang, right, comedy, bang, romance, bang, horror, and then you're building up a head of steam almost.
Yeah, no, it's actually quite useful in that respect of getting to then work with other people. So because you know, if you've only got one thing that you're working on, and it's just the one thing, this is the precious thing, then you're only going to get to work with one other, you know, director or one other camera person. But then if you're going, I've got a drawer load of stuff, and somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, would you like to make something? You're like, yeah, just have a read of anything in the drawer.
Not that drawer though. That's my special drawer. Don't go in that drawer.
But we genuinely did that for years. My brother and I that's how we'd audition producers as to whether or not they were a producer or not, because if they actually helped produced the film, and the film we're now sitting on a set about to shoot it. You're like, oh, you're a producer because you made that happen. And other ones, you're like, yeah, we gave them a script and nothing ever happened. You're like, well, you're not a producer.
I think we've got time for one more question. Yeah, go at the front. I think that's good.
Hiya. My question is about some of the stuff you were saying about how do you, so say you've got that pile of scripts, how do you get people to read them? Who do you send them to? How do you get like a job working on somebody else's program? Like how do you get that process started?
So I think one of the best ways is entering competitions. So if you don't have any contacts in the industry and you don't really know what to do, there isn't any clear pathway. So enter the competitions. For screenwriting, they will take people who haven't had any credits. BBC Writers' Room, they do a number of script submissions throughout the year, and you don't need to have had any experience. And I think they give you good feedback as well.
They do.
And there are some other competitions as well. I mean, there are actually quite a lot of competitions, but keep going. I mean, if you get rejected, apply again. I applied 1 year, got shortlisted, applied again, and I got onto the course. And they can really make a difference for you, and kind of they explain a lot of what the industry's about. If you've got no idea, they're really, really useful in that respect.
There are some that charge. I would say look at the ones that are free, because there are a lot of ones that charge. You don't get any feedback if you don't place, and then you've spent 45 quid entering, and there's a lot of them that do that. Not to say that they're bad, it's just that there are a lot of free ones that you can enter, especially as young people. There are lots that are open to sort of your age bracket, and they're really, really useful. And I would just say also shooting people, and there's probably a few forums where you can put your scripts up online for other people to read, and then you can kind of meet that community that you may not be able to find elsewhere.
And BAFTA, I think Rowcliffe, that's another one that's really good. Also, production companies are now starting to set up schemes to find new talent. So it's worth, I would like Google the top kind of production companies and have a look on their websites, because it's not always very obvious that they're running a competition until the competition's gone. So have a look and see what different companies are doing, because they are trying to look, but they don't make it very public.
Also, I think there's this thing that gets run by the BFI for young people, where they bring you all here and make you listen to idiots like us whilst you're all sat next to each other. I definitely know there's a director up there who's looking for a writer. But the point is actually most of the time we're going along to these things, these talks, it's the people that you're sat next to. And when you find the person that you're in agreement with, where you're going, yeah, that dude in the hat, he was such a fucking idiot, wasn't he? Great, you guys get on. You know, you're already making friends, and it's about making friends with each other. And you will make. There'll be this weird thing where it's kind of like it'll be 10 years down the line, and you'll be like, that person that was sat at the back there is now producing your film, which has genuinely happened to us many times over, actually. Like, you know, and it's kind of like it's the people sat here. It's just hang around, have a drink, take some BFI approved hard drugs, and get on with each other.
I've got a cool story about it quickly. I went to a TV festival recently where we got to pitch to the writers of Mad Men, and they told us a story about how Mad Men came about. And they were friends. They were a husband and wife team. They were friends with Matthew Weiner, who was the showrunner and creator. They just used to be in this writers' community. Every week they'd meet up in a diner with other writers. They'd sit there, they'd talk, blah, 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 blah. And he said, one day, hopefully, I'll give you a call. And like 5 years later, he calls them up and goes, I'm making a show, it's called Mad Men. Bang, that's happened. 5 Emmys later. It's that thing of that's going to be your journey. Some people in this room, 10 years later, you guys are going to be up here doing this because you've had a little chat about how annoying we were, innit? So.
On that amazingly positive, inspirational note, please give a very warm thank you to our guests, Isaac, Grace and Chris. Thank you so much. I am now going to ask you to exit for our next guest. And thank you for all of your questions as well. They were brilliant. So now it's time for our BFI Network Short of the Month. So I'm going to be joined on stage by producer Isabel Steibley-Johnson and director Poonam Brar. you for coming.
Keep away from you.
So, yeah, all right. So, you are here to show your film, Homegirl. Tell us a bit about how you came on board with this, how it came about. Do you want to start with you?
Sure. It's one of the first short films that I've made, and I was a theatre director previously. And so what happened was I worked with Iman Qureshi, who's the writer, in theatre shows, and we were really interested in taking some of those ideas across to film, because we're writing about sort of diverse female characters, and we were interested in finding a bigger audience for those stories. And so we entered London Calling we entered it like 2 or 3 times, and refined the ideas of the final screenplay over that time, and worked with different producers each time. And so that was interesting also, because different producers brought a different sort of funding model to how we would realise the film, and that's quite interesting how that affects the story that you're going to tell. So we were successful the 3rd time I think we applied with Isabel. Yeah, so we got to make it last year, and now it's doing festivals.
Amazing. So yeah, so tell us about your kind of coming on board then.
Once again, it was through friends. One of my really good friends knew Iman, the writer, and she said, you know, they're looking for a producer. So I came on board, I read the script, I was like, this is great. And we applied to London Calling, and it just made sense. It just came through, clicked. And then, yeah, we made it through that scheme. And after the scheme, we did, you know, in typical form, when you're making a short film, it's a labor of love. And when you're making a short film through a scheme, because you have a certain time to make it in, you do then revisit it afterwards. So we revisited the edit, and now, yeah, we've managed to get into BFI Flair. So this is the 3rd time it's being shown at the BFI, which is exciting.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was a lengthy process, but in the end, we have something that we're really happy with.
So bearing in mind, obviously we're talking about screenwriting, so what was it about the script that grabbed you? You said it was great, you know, obviously you were very attracted to it from the beginning, so what was it about the script and the story?
For me, it was about a very strong female character that is struggling, and so that automatically is interesting for me. You know, this female character is not, you know, she's not able to discuss things openly, and that's weighing down on her. So there's a lot of internal monologue, a lot of internal journey that she goes on, which automatically you're engaged with that as an audience member. So I read it and I thought, this is something that is in line with what I want to make as a producer.
Yeah, and it's kind of difficult without giving away the story, because you're just going to see it, so it's nice not to totally explain it all away. That's why I'm struggling slightly. But also for Iman and I, what was really important was that we wanted to sort of confront the stereotypes and the tropes of how British Asian families are presented in drama. And we wanted to sort of have a dialogue about that and open that out a bit. So, you know, quite often you have kind of patriarchal male villains and females are seen as victims. And so this, as Isabel was saying, that Roya in this film is a strong character, and actually the struggle is with herself. And also, at the moment, what's great about all the female stories that are coming out is that they're more about self-growth, and so that can be quite a passive thing to show on film. So it was kind of addressing sort of those challenges of making that a visual story. That makes sense. So about, you know, it's not a hero's journey kind of story where she's out there actively in the world having battles and conflicts, and it's about her inner growth and about how she expands her sense of self and how the world grows to accept her. So it's a kind of a different sort of storytelling paradigm that we were looking at. And so these are the kind of things that Iman and I have been working on in our theatre work, and we wanted to sort of bring that to film. So that's different. That's interesting because it's a different kind of storytelling that we had to sort of engage the whole filmmaking team in, from including our DOP, in terms of how we use the camera to tell that story.
And you mentioned, obviously, this is doing the rounds at film festivals. How important is it to pick the right film festivals for your film? Because I know, Underwire was on your list as well, and which is obviously very female-centric. So, yeah, is that really important, or sometimes is it a case of just kind of like throwing it out there to as many as possible? How does it work?
We've so this is my 12th short film that I've made. Including the ones where I'm just playing around. But this is, and when you start out, you're like, I'm gonna get into every short film. I'm gonna try and get into, Sundance, my first short that I make. Let's be serious. I think work to create a really clear distribution plan treat it like a distribution plan, like anybody, any producer, any distributor would. Take a step back from your film, which is so hard to do because you've just made this film and you've just put all of your life into it. But take a step back and pinpoint what is actually festivals that you will get into, what are festivals that have great audiences that you can engage with, that industry professionals will go to, that you can meet people, that you can go to talks, things like that, things that really matter, rather than just trying to just throw it out into the world, because we've gotten into 10 festivals. We're halfway through. We're halfway through the run, I think, at the moment. But we've also been rejected from 10, so you will get rejected from tons. And if you don't plan your distribution, it will be demoralizing to you. You'll just get constant rejection. And so you need that, you need to get into some as well, I think, and that positive reinforcement,
Amazing. Well, congratulations again. And on that note, would you like to introduce your film?
Sure. This is Home Girl by Iman Qureshi, who's not here today. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.